I think people who know me will always know that I've wanted to keep politics a little bit on the agenda whenever we meet, because it's really important. Politics today is about skills, and it is political because governments always fight about it and keep tinkering with it, and we always have problems with it. But in thinking about this session, it occurred to me that Edinburgh has always been about being ahead of the game, about spotting new things that are happening, giving people a chance to air their ideas in front of a distinguished bunch of people, most of whom come up here every year. And that really actually what's happening in the world of legacy media like TV or film or something is that we have a problem that we call disintermediation. The rapid changes in technology are actually challenging the models and the value chains by which our societies have operated by and kind of get used to after a while, maybe too used to them. And actually I think what's happened is that with the debate today about skills that are relevant to our industry, is that technological change is actually is in the process of disintermediating the way we do things in education. It just cannot keep up with the rapid changes. But this session is based on the hypothesis that we will test with our panel in a minute, that the educational system really isn't delivering the skills necessary for our industry, and secondly, that at the point now where we are in history with a recession, governments are missing a real trick in terms of understanding what a big role, and particularly in developed economies, that the skills of computer science or design or graphics and stuff can play in generating employment and generating added value and revenues in modern developed societies. And I think it's a real shame. But what I do think also is that we are starting to find ourselves having to take matters into our own hands on these things. And I think that's a good thing. And so today we're going to discuss from various perspectives the issues relating to skills and what we can do about that sort of thing. And just finally, it just occurred to me when David introduced me as having come into the games industry to found Tiger and this event as well a couple of years later. But one thing that always hit me about the computer games industry, there were so many people in it who had formed their companies without going to school. They'd actually left when they were legally allowed to leave school, and they'd learnt programming themselves, and they'd created in many cases successful companies. So that's maybe we're going to be like that all the time. I mean, what Ian said this morning about how publishers reacted to his books and that format in which he was writing is also probably because we're always ahead of the game and anticipating things. So okay, so we've got a session now on skills. So I'm going to ask Ella Romanos, who runs a small but growing company in Plymouth that makes games, if she thinks there is a problem in terms of skills, how she perceives skills of people who come to her, and maybe what she'd like to see happening a bit more in the system, whatever that is, to help her company.
Okay, I mean, there is a problem. Is this on? There clearly is a problem. We find it very difficult to get graduates who are of a level that we can consider that we can actually take them on and help them to learn. We don't expect them to come with all the skills that they need to do their job, but we do expect them to have a certain level, and that often doesn't happen. I think there's a lot of different reasons. I think that one of the reasons is that there's a very big difference between the skills you need to go and work in a sort of AAA, more traditional studio, and the skills that you need to come and work for us. And I think that sometimes when we talk about the problem of what skills students learn at university, we don't actually take that into account. And I've seen a lot of talk, there's a lot of talk about sort of the games courses not being good, you should do computer science. That doesn't actually really apply to us. We actually prefer people to have a more rounded skill set and to have learnt higher level languages and the lower level stuff, because that's what we need. A lot of games courses aren't good, which is why they had a bad reputation, but when we talk about what a games course should be, I think it's very important to recognise that there are different types of companies within that, and those courses need to sort of understand what students they're outputting and where those students will be able to go. And one of the biggest problems is that students themselves don't understand that. We really prioritise people who can actually communicate and work with a team and stuff like that. And I tend to find those people more from games courses than, say, for example, from computer science. I think the other problem is that I don't think I've ever had a graduate come to me who's actually released a game, finished a game. That just doesn't happen, and I can't believe that should be a core requirement on any games course. There's no reason why you can't now. There's open platforms and it's free to do. If I was, that just seems like the absolute 101, and it's something we always ask for on CVs, and I don't think we've ever seen it yet. And that kind of leads back to the fact that they don't understand the process of making a commercial game. So they don't understand the steps you have to go through. They don't understand the multidisciplinary nature of it. They don't understand the post-production process and all that kind of stuff. So even if they can code, they can't really do it because we can't let them actually just get on with it. They don't understand how to structure. They don't understand how to plan. And all that. I would rather they knew that stuff, and we have to sort of brush up their tech skills. I think the final point is that it needs to start a lot younger. So we can't just look at university. This needs to start really young. And kids need to be self-motivated into learning this stuff. They need to be self-driven. And they need to be informed about what the industry needs and actually able to make decisions for themselves and judge the university's courses for themselves. If the course isn't any good, the students shouldn't be applying to it because they should know it's not very good. And at the moment, they don't.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll come back to you when we've discussed a few things in terms of what we think the solutions to that might be. Ian, you don't really need introduction. You are Mr. Skills as well. You represent our sector to government and things, and not that long ago you were responsible for the well-known Hope Livingston report on animation and computer game skills. One of the things that occurred out of that report was that the government accepted that the skills that were taught, ICT skills as they're known in schools, were inappropriate and has suggested that they don't happen anymore. But is there any signs of anything happening? Is there any signs that they understand what the problem might be in terms of, if you believe indeed that what Ella said is true and that we have a problem with skills? It's a long subject, so yeah. I know. We've only got 3 quarters of the minute.
Just getting myself ready for this one. Yeah. First, I would say that the government are well aware of the need for digital skills. Ed Vasey, 2 years ago, in fact, asked Alex Hope and I to draft the Next Gen report because wearing my computer games skills hat for skill set, we'd found out of the 144 games courses at universities, only 11 had been accredited as being fit for purpose. A lot of them were generalists, teaching about the philosophy of games, the soft skills, some design, but they weren't being taught the hard skills, i.e. computer science, art and animation, necessary to make games. And so Ed tasked us with writing this report and very kindly organised getting Nestor on board, who both funded and did the bulk of the research and data gathering, conducted 7 Ipsos Murray studies, so we had some real empirical data to support our arguments. And we found that the problem didn't actually start in universities itself, the fact that there were 10% year-on-year drop-off in people applying to study computer science at universities, in particular Cambridge, which was frightening. The problem was, in fact, schools. ICT is currently taught, as we all know, is largely office skills. You're learning about Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, and against all odds managed to turn children off for life from computing. And here we are as a very creative nation, and in the digital world we have to be able to empower our creatives to be able to create content for a digital world. And yet we were doing everything but. We were teaching our children how to use applications rather than how to create applications. And in turn, that effectively meant we were teaching them to read, but not to write. And it wasn't the teacher's fault. They were stuck with a curriculum that was irrelevant to the world in which we live and irrelevant to children's lives, because our children conduct their lives through social media, mobile devices, collaboration, etc. And then there was a sort of existing 19th century method of teaching of one person standing up, talking at children, expect them to write down stuff and regurgitate to order. That's all got to change, and part of that, this revolution that's happening, is how computer science should become an essential discipline of the curriculum. The Next Gen report, and you can download it from nested.org.uk, it's had over 25,000 downloads now. The number one recommendation was to have computer science on the schools national curriculum as an essential discipline. Didn't get much traction until Eric Schmidt, chairman of Google, referenced our report at the McTaggart lecture in Edinburgh last year. And of course, if Eric said it, it must be true. Then the Prime Minister made a similar speech at Tech City a month later, and that in turn opened the doors to Number 10 and to Michael Gove's special advisors, and suddenly the penny dropped. So we'd be able to bypass the DFE's civil service, who were not open to change, who kept this sort of blancmange, we don't want change because it exposes us to risk. No, until you get to the special advisors, and I think you realize that the country is run by people who are unelected advisors because they know what's going on and they can tell the ministers and they can make things change. Anyway, long story short, Michael Gove, to his great credit, took on board the recommendations and, as you quite rightly say, announced that this September the current program of sort of ICT will be disapplied and a new IT curriculum with computer science at its core will be implemented. Now we have to move from recommendation to implementation. But in so doing, Michael Gove's was a statement of intent and was throwing back the construct of that curriculum back to industry, back to learner societies, etc., because they don't feel equipped to be able to create a curriculum that is robust and rigorous like they always demand, but at the same time relevant, exciting, and appropriate for how children conduct their everyday lives. So I think if we can start with a wicked curriculum and have a rather unstructured way of doing this, it's a great starting point. And rather than teachers living in fear of teaching computer science, they can become facilitators, enablers. You can adopt a flipped classroom approach where the children could do their learning at home, online, learning from MIT, Harvard, the best teachers in the world, and in the classroom, they're working collaboratively together, artists and scientists, doing things together, not necessarily being assessed as individuals, and doing it with the children working with the teachers to learn this fantastic thing that's going to drive our digital economy. So it has to become the fourth science. Everyone has the opportunity to learn computer science. Now, at the beginning, that could be simple digital literacy, like it's been taught today, and then if they like that, they can do problem-solving, algorithms, and if they like that, they go on to do computer coding. And initiatives like what these two guys are doing, and Bill in particular, is going to help enable that sort of exciting, relevant stuff that kids can really get excited about, building content rather than just using passively other people's content. So I think there's a great initiative going on today. And it's not going to be easy. There's loads of problems. Examining boards have got to get their heads around it. The government's got to institute a package of teacher training courses and continue professional development for existing ICT teachers. But you shouldn't be afraid. We can all do this together. It's the fourth science. And if we don't do it, we're going to miss a huge opportunity because we are perhaps the most creative nation in the world.
But we shouldn't wait for government institutions and systems.
Well, government aren't saying they're going to write the curriculum. They're just saying, you can do this, but we have to do it as a nation together.
Okay.
Because they don't know about it. The teachers don't. Not many teachers know about it. Enough do. There's computing at school run by British Computer Society. They've got about 1,000 teachers, but there simply aren't enough. So all we're going to do with this is collaboration, cooperation, and sort it. It's not rocket science. It's a lot simpler than people think.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, well, now as Ian showed, we've got two people that are going to talk about initiatives that they promoted and pushed and spent a lot of time on getting off the ground. And we're going to hear how our industry has actually taken matters into its hand to do things. And I think what better way than to teach people those skills than the computer games industry, because for as far as I can see, it's the thing that will engage kids a lot more, and it's a great way that we should make our reputation as a responsible and industry that actually adds value to society, rather than always being sniped at for the few sort of violent games that the Daily Mail picks up on. Ray, you were head honcho on marketing at Sony Games, and now you spent an awful lot of time getting your interactive opportunities thing off the ground. Please, I don't know how many people would know about that. Who in this room knows?
One.
Two. Well, there you go. I was going to say, just for the benefit of those who don't know, you better just tell people what you're doing, and obviously it's fairly quick time because I want to open this up quite soon afterwards to everybody off the floor.
Okay, very, very quickly. 17 years at PlayStation, and about 2005, I tried to get into schools to see if we could use PlayStation 2 with the iToy camera to do distance learning, doing just language stuff from here to France. Did it work? Yes, it did work. Only trouble was it cost 25 quid to have the PlayStation plugged in by the contractor who was there to plug things in at schools. And I kind of very, very quickly understood that the life within education is the same as just about every other life. It's about infrastructure, device and content. So in other words, if you have a look at the infrastructure that we have within the schools, it's a massive infrastructure and it doesn't change quickly. So when you take, 24,000 schools and 500,000 teachers and 8.4 million kids, you've got something that you can't turn on a sixpence. When I started in 2005, the infrastructure just wasn't good enough. The pipe wasn't good enough. Our devices weren't really strong enough. Fast forward to now, the infrastructure is pretty good in terms of technology. The infrastructure of actually getting people to learn stuff and be funded to learn stuff is still pretty ropey. So we've got a set of people who are responsible for a course, which we now understand is not what we actually need. But where's the funding or where's the infrastructure? Because a lot of the LEAs took down their city learning centres and just sacked everyone. So now, is there time to get the teachers out of the schools, to get them retrained? And anyway, when you're retraining them, what are you retraining them on? Add to that the situation where, do you know what? If we're not careful, we could turn just about every single kid off video games by making it stodgy and part of the curriculum and something that they don't want to do. That's not what we should be about. We should be about giving them the skills to understand what it is, and if they so desire, if they want to be a doctor, you study medicine. If they want to be a games person, you go and study that at a further depth. So, what we're doing, the same as Bill actually, is making sure that all the games creation courses we put together or add content into are by the choice of the student, and they're out of curriculum, they're at lunchtimes and they're in the evenings. What I've also found is that although there are roughly one primary school teacher responsible for ICT, so you've got 17,500 of those, and then in the secondary schools there's only 5,000 of those, but there's normally 3 people who are responsible for ICT. Now, within that, there are some amazing people out there doing some fantastic work. There's also organisations around that Ian's already mentioned that also have, a massive amount to give, but we have difficulty in getting everyone to sit together and, go through an intermediary, if you like, whether that should be NACE or whoever, to actually understand where we start and where we finish. Because I'm with you, I want to see kids creating a game and finishing a game while they're at school. Nothing to do with when they get to university. They should have been at this stage already. So one of the things that always became a problem was people said, well, you want to use technology, you want to go into this technology stuff, prove it. So this empirical evidence stuff is really important. So we've just done a study up in Wolverhampton through 16 schools in Wolverhampton, 10-week-long period. We just gave them Little Big Planet and said, right, design a game around Wolverhampton. And, of course, 16 different schools came up with 16 different applications. It was fantastic. The kids were so engaged because it was a voluntary thing. And we had an independent researcher having a look at what it actually meant. In other words, what did the kids get out of it? How did they behave? All of these elements were done on an independent base. And thank God, because it could have been disastrous, but thank God it came out as a really good piece of work. So we could talk about this all night. You want to get on, but fundamentally, infrastructure, we've got to get around some of those issues. We've got to show people that this stuff is good and is fun. We've got to make sure that the kids are having a brilliant time while they're doing it, and inspire them to want to move forward. And I would say, once everyone gets this kind of idea that everything that's got a chip in it has got a line of code strapped to it, and you can understand how that code is formulated. We teach languages. We teach French and German. Well, code is another language as well. Why don't we teach that? So there's loads of things that we can do to make this happen. And time's not on our side because of this whole, if we take it apart, then what happens to the cash within schools? The schools don't have enough cash. It could well be that they just walk away from the whole area. And I'd hate that to happen.
Okay, but how just finally before we hand over to Bill, how do people get involved with I.O.? How does I.O. reach a school and have the effect that you're talking about?
Well, I think luckily there's a good, strong wave of people who want to do this kind of stuff, and I think it has to be voluntary. There are teachers all over the country, probably about 1,000 of them, I would realistically guess, who are anxious to take part in this. Some of it is about content, which is the last bit that I was talking about. Devices is easy. Everything connects to the internet days, so that's not an issue. So it's the content. So we're doing things like provisioning content. We're going out there, actually connecting up with large brands to do some co-branded and co-funded content provision. And then that's got to keep turning around to make sure it's refreshed and it's not a massive issue, but we're a very small, underfunded, I'm not making any money out of this, organisation. So it can't be just me. It has to be a whole load of people holding hands to do this.
And how do they find out about it? How do the schools and the teachers find out about it? Or does it just spread virally?
Yeah, there are organisations. There's a handheld learning show. There's BET. There's loads of places where this stuff is talked about. Okay. Unfortunately, it's sometimes talked about from a political point of view. So we've got organisations trying to make their entrenched positions even more entrenched. And I think someone's got to crack a few skulls together and say, just get on with it.
Thank you, Ray. Bill, a successful entrepreneur. I met you last year, and you told me about Coder Dojo, and I had to come and have a look, and I did. I went over to Cork to the original Coder Dojo in Cork on a Saturday from 12 till 4, and I was just astounded. There were 80 kids there. There were 33 of them were women because I did a head count. Were girls. Anybody under 12 had a parent with them, and for 4 hours the place was just like a beehive. There was no chatter, there was no bad behaviour, there was nothing. It was industrious. I was just absolutely gobsmacked with what happens in there, and the will of those kids, who you always tend to think nowadays kids are badly behaved because you see them in the streets. You're sort of moaning and with all this kind of sense of expectation of everything in the world that there is, and I've never seen anything like it, and that's what gave me the inspiration to have this session here and to ask Bill to come over. So, Bill, tell us about Coder Dojo and how it happened and how it's going.
Thanks. The spark of nature's fire is all the learning I desire. I wish you all to give me your eyes, because this is directly relevant to every person in this room. There are 500,000 ICT jobs in Europe that are unfilled for over 1 year. There are 100,000 ICT jobs that are unfilled in Silicon Valley, the mecca of all tech talent. The resource that you built your empires on is crumbling. Why? Because we are not producing talented coders the way we should be as a sane society. So, I'm going to tell you some things that I'm going to assert, and I would like you to listen without skepticism for a moment. As Burns also said, skepticism is a heavy armour that saps more than it protects. And you'll get to why I'm using poetry in a minute. Children naturally learn through play. If you don't believe this, leave now. Most of the great geeks that I have met, most of the fantastic programmers, started learning this young in their bedrooms by themselves, and they devoted their 10,000 hours before they were teenagers. This left them with some perhaps interesting social issues, but they are fantastic coders. Why are they fantastic coders? Because, as was rightly said, programming is language, and we know from study after study that if you learn a language before neural pruning occurs, 17, 18 years of age, you become a native speaker. And the best programmers are poets. They compress more information, more power, more speed into fewer lines of code. Burns was a fantastic programmer of the English language. We want digital poets. We want digital creators. And we would like a side benefit. We would like digital creators, native speakers, poets who play well with others. So, just over a year ago, a young fella came to me. He said, "I've got a startup." I said, "Okay, great. How old are you?" "Oh, I'm 18. James Welton." Fantastic. 18 years old, got his own startup. And he said, "I've got to talk to you about something else, because while I'm passionate about my startup, I'm also really concerned because I'm finishing my leaving cert in Ireland, and the computer club I started is going to shut down, and I don't want that to happen." I said, "How did that happen?" He said, "Well, I won a web award when I was very young, and the headmaster broadcast this over the PA system that I won a web award. And what happened? Many, many kids came out and sought James out and said, 'How did you win a web award at so young? Teach us how to program.'" Now, when I heard that, being a bit of a marketer, I didn't hear a nice tale. I heard market demand. Because if a geeky teenager gets one announcement over a random school's PA and it causes other teenagers to have seeking behavior, that's impressive. That means there's lots of demand. That means there must be kids out there who want to learn to code. Now, I never really thought about this. I hadn't thought about the education implications in schools of programming because I homeschool my kids. I haven't touched the education system for years. I went and did a little research. Guess what? There are no programming courses in primary schools almost anywhere. This horrified me because I knew about all the other things that I just asserted to you. That you need to learn it young and you need to be a native speaker to be brilliant. So James and I sat together and we said, well, that club is closing down at your school, but what about if we open a club together? Now, I'm quite good at branding, so I know one key fact. If you're going to create a meme and you're going to have it scale, you might as well create a good brand. Now, around the world, there's a system of pedagogy, that means how to teach stuff, that has been around for 2,000 years and is arguably a global success. It is how you go and learn how to do a martial art, karate, judo, kendo, kung fu. You go to a dojo, a temple of learning. At the front of a dojo, there is a subject matter expert. You do not learn karate because somebody writes the moves on a blackboard and then sets you a test. All right? In a dojo, you learn by sparring. You have collaborative learning. In a dojo, you have many mentors, subject matter experts, and senteis who come in, often donating their time, not paid, to teach you how to learn a martial art. We thought, what if we combine that system of learning, a learning environment, if you like, with programming? Because there are plenty of online tools, right? There's Codecademy, there's W3 schools, there are all these things, all these online resources, but there's no bit that interfaces the online with the offline world or the live world. So we went out and we sat down and we created this brand. We got a designer to do a nice logo for us. And then we set about creating a rule set. Now, you know, if you're going to build a game, it's the constraints that make it playable. Well, if you're going to make a learning environment, it's the constraints. Well, we started with 10 rules, and then we started with, 5 rules, and we cut it down to 3. Now we have 1 rule: be cool. This plays very well with the kids. It's also highly effective. Ever told a kid they're uncool for doing something? That behavior ends immediately. Tell them what they're doing is cool, on the other hand. Oh boy. So, we created our rule set. We looked at what our curriculum would be. We ended up with one word: encouragement. We could probably add a second word: fun. We do not have a formal curriculum. We did a lot of testing to see what would work. We went out, found a single venue in Cork at the National Software Centre, and we begged them to give it to us for free because we wanted to make it scalable. That was 1 year ago. We got our first few kids just through word of mouth. A month later, a little kid called Harry Moran showed up, and he stayed on till Christmas, and he's still part of the movement. But in those 90 days since he started up, he got really into it because he had never really coded before. After 90 days, he submitted his first app to the App Store, a game. It's called PizzaBot. I suggest you play with it. PizzaBot is a commercially successful app. Unfortunately, when he registered his account with Apple, they told him they had to delete it after he told them his age, 12. They officially acknowledged Harry as the youngest successful app developer in Apple's history at that time. 3 months from fiddling around with Scratch to commercially successful app. We have been absolutely clear with everyone that it is all about volunteerism. That means every one of you, I would expect, given that you have such a stake in this, could in fact be the champion of a dojo. Coder dojos generally work by going into somebody's office. There are dojos now in Twitter, in GitHub, in Google, in Facebook. We have had dojos in a variety of pubs, restaurants, community centres. There's a dojo at McAfee and also at Big Fish Games. Any venue that has heat, light, power and Wi-Fi can host a dojo. Maybe 20, 30 kids, perfect. 2 or 3 mentors. If you can give 1 hour a month, 3 hours a month, 1 or 2 hours a week, that's enough to get a dojo running. We are now, after 1 year, at 107 dojos and 6,000 kids learning to code every single day. And they code collaboratively. There is a dojo on the island of Arran Moor, and the mentors Skype in from London. There is a dojo in Tokyo. We are working with a partner called Kamara across the Africas to put dojos into their network for disadvantaged people in developing nations. The most important thing, though, is the kids love it. They go wild for this stuff. I cannot believe how young and how capable they are. And I want to tell you one last story. There is a little kid called Alan. He is now 10. He was 9 at the time. 9. A mentor came in from a learning institution and started presenting some of our courseware. He got it wrong. Little Alan put up his hand and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you got that wrong." The mentor asked, "Oh, how do you know, young fella?" "Oh, I wrote it." You can trust kids to learn and to learn collaboratively and to teach themselves this stuff. You don't have to put a heavy curriculum on them. If you just have a few adults who are subject matter experts to inspire them and answer that tricky question, or help them find the answer, because these days a lot of our mentors, when they're asked the tricky question, go, You just need a few guys like that, few girls like that to be mentors. It doesn't have to be all that serious, and it works, and it grows. So I'm begging you all, don't wait for the governments to do it. Don't wait for somebody else to solve your problem. Start a Coder Dojo in your business, in your area. Bring your own kids. Bring your neighbors' kids. Bring your cousins. Start your dojo. If you go to coderdojo.com, you can just click Start a Dojo. There's 2 pages to read. That's all. Go through those 2 pages. We'll give you all the love and care and attention we can. And I just want to say, after 12 months, we just had a huge dojo in the Irish Parliament. The Irish Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, was high-fiving at my co-founder, and somebody asked, how much money has all this cost? We don't even have a bank account. We have never had a cent. We don't raise money, we don't look for money, we don't want contributions. If you want to give us money, save your money, spend it on a venue nearby you, and create a Coder Dojo for the kids in your area. you will make a bigger difference. Because at the end of the day, everything runs on code. And give you the last example. There was a company in Dublin recently who had their entire billing team swept up and poached and hired by Google. Was it a high-tech games company? No. Was it a bank? Likely, but no. It was the gas company. All of our lives rely on code. We need more coders. Please help us out now. Thank you.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more. But before I do that, Ian, how do you react to the whole idea of no curriculum as a way of, that statement that Bill made about no curriculum?
I think you can exist with a wiki curriculum, which is relevant for whoever is in charge of that particular aspect of children's lives. So this free form that Bill's doing is a fantastic initiative, and all power to him and others like him. But at the same time, we still need some structure in the education system, but we do have to make sure that is relevant and exciting to children to motivate them. We can no longer afford to talk at them because we've done them a great disservice for the last 20 years. Remember the 1980s, the BBC Micro was a cornerstone of computing in schools, and the Sinclair Spectrum was an affordable, programmable computer. All that got lost over time as networks and computers got locked down by worried IT teachers, IT guys and girls and teachers who were worried about what might be happening. We cannot shut the world from our children. Theirs is an online, collaborated, linked, networked life, and they have to be allowed to do that and learning in that way as well. But we will need some curriculum, and if it's a wiki curriculum, people can adapt it to how they want it to be, which is right and relevant for the particular schools. We can't have totally unstructured lives, or we're not going to work as a society, but this is to be massively encouraged.
By the way, I'm not recommending no curriculum for schools. If you asked me, I'd probably recommend no schools at all, but that's a different story. No, seriously
Maybe
though,
I knew that.
schools, we do have Coder Dojos at schools. The schools have to lift their game to match the rule because they have to be cool. That does take some work. But Album Al Khanti in the US just did, and you can actually, if you go to NBC TV, you can actually see a dojo live.
The important thing is to get the teachers on board, because it's not been their fault to have to teach Excel for a year and get children to suggest what's the optimal size for a screen. We've just done them a great disservice. We've got to excite them to want to create technology, because when they are creating stuff, they do come alive. Watch any child. And young children using Kodu or Scratch can get excited. As soon as they get something animating on screen, you've got them.
Yeah.
When did Mozart do his best work? Seriously, guys. The opportunity here is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ray, I mean, your scheme is slightly different. You've gone straight into schools. These are not mutually exclusive, are they?
No, they're not. And one of the things we're passionate about is that when we put a club together in a school, we don't do what schools often do, which is say, you're 11, you sit over there, you're 10, you sit in a different class. When you see the kids actually working together, rather than being elitist, you get the older ones mentoring the younger ones. And we've taken that then to the next stage, which is, for me, it's not only about games, it's about anything that's digital. So it could be photography, it could be music, I don't really care. I want to see digital leaders. But we then get the kids that go on to university to become disciples for us, and they come back into the schools and they tell them what it's like in university, and we also then do some trips for the kids to go to see what's happening at university. So we kind of bridge this gap, again on a small scale, but that's what we're trying to do. And then another initiative through BAFTA, which is the Business and Universities Games Syndicate, is basically getting some universities to sit together and agree on some principles. One of them is you will make and complete a game. Okay, so that answers one of your things. You will understand the disciplines required, the different disciplines that are required to make a game. Yeah. You will understand how you work as a team to get from one end to the other end, you know. And I've taught in the University of Westminster, which is bizarre because I never went to university, but nevertheless, it was shocking to see how far I thought they were behind the curve. This is year 2 students, and I personally believe that if we can get this sorted, we can get kids leaving school further advanced than those second-year students. Already there's a school because they've got a brilliant ICT teacher who's just absolutely fantastic, and it's a girls' school, and they're all coding in C++. And you go, sorry, people are proving this on a daily basis that it can be done. The only thing that stops us, again, it comes back to this infrastructure stuff, which is, how can you get a body of people who are not in the right place to get into the right place? Where's the money for the support? How do you scale it up? It's really a scaling issue.
Okay. Ella, does this chime with you? What you've heard of these initiatives and what you've heard Ian talking about, what's going on in government and stuff, is this good news to you as a potential employer of more people?
Yeah, definitely, and particularly I think like Coder Dojo, I love the idea of it all being self-motivated and kind of really coming from the kids. But I think, as you guys sort of said, the school stuff is really important, and obviously, like, the curriculum has to be there to support that. I think it's going to be, you know, I don't know sort of how it's going to work in practice once, obviously, it sort of comes in. But, I mean, the ICT thing is, obviously, having come out of school fairly recently, I was sort of saying to Ian the other day that I am a really good touch typist. I can type at, like, 70 words a minute, and that's what I learned in ICT. Yeah. You know, so I think I could probably get a job as a secretary, but you know, it's not really very
great. A nation of secretaries.
And it's funny, it's the only GCSE grade that I didn't get an A in was ICT. So yeah, I mean, it's a joke, and it just needs to change, and it needs to come from the kids and from people who are really motivated, like these guys.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. Okay.
I got a question before we go to questions. Okay. Who here has been moved enough that they will do something towards creating a Coder Dojo in their area?
You've just taken my question from me. That was the close. That was the closing question.
Hey. Come on, that's not enough. That's not enough. I need more. But that's great. Please, 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 immediately go to coderdojo.com and click Start a Dojo. Just read those 2 pages.
Actually, just one more thing I would say is that, I mean, most people I know in the industry, particularly younger people, sort of running studios or working studios, are also really passionate about this. And I don't think there'd be any problem getting mentors, whether that's for Coder Dojos or to go into schools and work, do different things. Like, people are really, in my experience, people in the industry are really passionate, and they will give their time to do this.
I know. It was. I tell you, I'm still buzzing off what I saw in Cork. 80 people. Most of them were their parents. Downstairs was Bill explaining to kids just what code means, and they were just around there like buzzing, you know. And then upstairs there were people doing stuff on, you know, elementary web creation and using Game Maker to make games. And I saw one kid, 1.5 hours, he had sort of basically at one level of a basic game ready after 1.5 hours of using Game Maker. It was awesome. And there were only about 3 or 4 staff around. Yep. The other thing was, I'm so used to parents coming up to me saying, bloody games, computer games and all the rest of it. And you should have just seen the way the parents were there. They were just talking so enthusiastically how the game idea was motivating their kids to go out and learn, and how, you know, how amazingly diligent they were about learning more. So that was really good. Okay, guys, we've only got a few minutes left, so over to you. And can we start? Poor old Rupert's about to collapse with his legs because he's been running around chasing everybody. I'm going to try and get the mic handed over to the next person. So if you want to say your question, and then I'll pick somebody, hand it along to this guy here afterwards, yeah?
Hello. Just a question. One way of getting into schools, because for reasons that are fairly obvious, they don't allow you to walk through the front door. Protection of the children is always the number one concern. One body who strikes me, because I'm one myself, as potentially being very interested in this idea, school governors. Have you had any interaction with the Association of School Governors?
Not directly, no. We obviously went through the SSAT as they were. Obviously, again, a big footprint. There's a company called Decoded, and it was started by a marketeer And the reason that he started that was that when people were thinking about where their marketing budgets went and they were putting it on digital, that actually they didn't really understand what that digital world meant. So he started on this whole thing about getting this, people to understand code. They would understand things like HTML, in the morning, and then a discussion, and then in the afternoon they would make an app. I tried to get that sponsored into the school system, but again, there was no money to send people to a course like that, so that head teachers could get an understanding of where the problem really was, because a lot of them don't understand the issue, to be quite frank. So we try to get through the door in many different ways. We found the most successful way now is to talk to the ones who are inspired. They talk to other people, and then we've gone from school to school, basically. Now we're into LEA to LEA. But it's heavy lifting. It really is heavy. I would love to find another way that we could do this en masse, but teach people en masse.
Well, I think potentially we should have a discussion offline about this.
Love to.
The other thing is in terms of the interaction with STEMnet, because I've been talking to our headmaster about looking at setting up a STEM club. Now, what you're doing on Coder Dojo sounds to me as something that's an extension, because my main concern with STEMnet in the past was there wasn't that much emphasis placed on the T, an awful lot on the science, engineering and maths, but not an awful lot on the technology. So if there's a source of information that can help to fill that gap, that might be quite interesting. So again, could I have an offline conversation with someone about that?
Well, actually, there's a very comprehensive set of resources on coderdojo.com.
Yeah.
And we're also talking to Khan Academy about partnering on getting into STEM, because Khan have the fantastic maths resources online, but they don't have any real-world meetings. And we see this time and time again. You need to get kids actually out of a school environment and into a different environment. The environment itself makes a huge difference. That's why universities, businesses, game developers are extremely good. You have the meetings there. It takes on a new life, and that very change in context actually enriches the curriculum. And then you start to see them learning other things. So in one of our Coder Dojos in Galway, they're actually learning Italian and French alongside C and Node.js.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on that, but the only thing is the school I work with is in a fairly rural area, so actually getting them to an organisation might be an issue.
We have a Coder Dojo in a little town called Rosscarbery. It's in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. It's got a couple of thousand people, and there is a dojo with 60 bright kids every week in the local hotel. And the local hotel actually makes enough money selling teas and coffees to the parents to pay for the room.
Yes, but I'm talking about babies.
Could we move on now, please? I mean, please have a word with Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I would get a little bit worried if this all became something subject to the approval of an association of school governors.
I think you're underestimating their goodwill and their ability to change things, because the vast majority of parents, and they were a group who identified the next gen as being ones who sometimes had rather negative views of the industry. So frankly, if you can get to their hearts and minds, I think you're better placed to achieve something.
But yeah, great.
We're partnering rather than oppositional, so we don't underestimate.
Hi. In traditional dojos, martial arts use a very effective system of encouraging and challenging pupils to progress. They use the coloured belt system. I was just wondering whether or not you'd consider doing that, because I think it would be quite cool.
We have these really cool. One of the companies donated a whole lot of USB wristbands in different colours, and there are belts. And we also have badges for achievement, including virtual badges, including community achievement badges, all those sorts of things. We're working on the gamification. That's taking a bit more iteration, because we don't want it to be like a set of exams, because we think that's in the words of one really good high school principal, he told me exams, the best thing you say about them is they're mildly motivational for about 25% of students. So we don't want them to be exams, but we do want it gamified, and we have got belts.
I have the mic, so I ask a quick question and pass it back. I know there'll be a lot of people happy and anxious to contribute time or advice or whatever, but not everyone's a coder or a good coder mentor. Is there a way that you find the mentors who will go on the Skype to the Isle of Iran and whatever?
Yes, actually, a lot of the time we tell dojo champions, because there's champions who are just anybody who wants to actually do it, and they don't have to be a coder. And there's mentors who should be coders. And for the champions to find the mentors, posting on bulletin boards at local colleges, local radio we found is really amazing. You get someone you get the champion of a dojo to say, look, the dojo is going to be here at this time. We've got a call out for mentors. A lot of the time, one radio ad at drive time in the local radio, and you fill it. And then there's plenty of word of mouth as well. Plus, of course, we've got communication through coderdojo.com. We get people volunteering to be mentors as well.
Sorry. Yeah, hi. Hi, my name is Lynn, and I'm actually from Norway. And I work with an organization we've started calling ourselves the Game Developers Guild of Norway. And this is definitely something that we put on our agenda. We need to get more coding into schools and everything. And I just thought we had this amazing meeting with public libraries, actually, who were really thrilled about using game developers to have sort of digital workshops and getting into having game workshops, basically, teaching kids and getting kids to, of course, get to libraries as well. And I was wondering if you guys have thought of using libraries as an option in the meantime while you're trying to work with schools.
Absolutely. We are yet to land a library, but we not for want of trying. A lot of the times libraries have very poor internet access, which is a problem for a venue.
Okay.
Hi there. I work in a college, and like many other colleges in Scotland, we've been running a new higher national diploma in computer games development. And so it's not really a question, it's just a statement here, but the course is very practical, and the students do produce games. They also do planning and testing, which they absolutely hate. They're just interested in the programming part of it and the design aspect as well. What most of them do is once they leave, they go on to a third year at university, and we often find that the students who've done 2 years at college have more practical skills. That's the feedback that we get from universities, and that's not a criticism, that's just an observation. But the other thing is, what is really difficult is to get industry involved with the students as well, and that's something that we would encourage. Students need to see what's happening out there, and it's very difficult to get people to come and speak to the students or to get them involved.
Can I just say, University College Cork, Trinity College Dublin, University College of Dublin, CIT in Cork have all started Coder Dojos, and they've actually found that people from industry will actually come into the college then. So, because it is about younger kids, and that's actually benefited the older kids in the curriculum as well. So maybe you want to have a look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
It can be very synergistic.
Yeah, I'm already thinking that we should be tying up with our local school and doing something like that.
To further that point of view as well, what we're trying to do is, we do actually have some people who will go into universities, but actually the industry, in terms of the amount of coders and the amount of pupils, they'd be going in almost every day. So there had to be somewhere scaling this. So what we want to do now is record their expertise and have that as a free resource online, so anyone can have a look at that. We also would like to make some of these teachers, the ones who are really good, to be almost like superstars themselves, because they've got so much to give, and it shouldn't just be within the audience that they have on that day, on that night. So we are going to be using, recordings to basically spread the word a little bit further. And when you do see someone inspirational, someone that's a legend of the industry talk, it does inspire without a doubt, regardless whether it's live or whether it's recorded.
I think, we do talks and stuff like that at universities. I think one of the problems is, like you said, we get so many requests. We can't afford to do it. Now, it's not the fact that we don't want to, but we could probably do several a week if we accepted everything. So what we've started doing is saying, you have to cover our costs. And a lot of places just say we can't afford it. And I feel really almost like evil when I say that. But the reality is that we are a business, and whilst we do want to help, and I think one of the things I like about Coder Dojo is talking about evenings or Saturdays. That's my free time. I can do that. But when you're at a school or a college, you're talking about 9 to 5. Yeah. That is cost time. And I don't think it's very fair that universities and colleges ask people to do that for free and then kind of often have this sort of oh, well, you know, you obviously don't care. Well, we do care, but we also run a business. So.
Yeah, Coder Dojos are always after school hours or on the weekends.
Okay, last question, I think, from John.
Has to be very short and sweet, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, two very short and sweet questions. One's called Art-Science Divide and the other's called Oldies. Let's go for Oldies because the other one's too long. Involving postgraduate education, and what we did at the National Film and Television Schools, we took our first years and gave them what we call the 3-week code camp, which we said 0 to C++ in 3 weeks. Now, these people some of them had absolutely zero coding experience whatsoever, and we got them to get there and actually write an application. And I just wonder, don't forget the people in this room. That's a statement, not a question. Are you forgetting the people in this room who say, well, I don't code yet, and I could. And I know the sort of thing about learning early, but I think we've proved that you can get these skills later on in life, and especially if people are brilliant artists, and there are many of them even on our course, brilliant artists, you can teach them, you can equip them with coding possibilities. How about that?
Absolutely you can, and Coder Dojo is open for adults to come as long as they're accompanied by a minor.
Very good point.
I'm very sorry, we've actually gone over our time. Sorry about it, never got to you, but it's time to talk about it. I think this is an issue that we should revisit every year. It's a fast-moving area, and actually I don't think there's much point in me summing up because I think we're all pretty well in agreement with what's been going on. I just want to thank the panel for giving of their time and for being passionate about this, all of you, and for giving such inspiration. Thank you very much.
Thanks.